Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
The ancient town of Kusinara, now called Kushinagar, located in Uttar Pradesh, India, about 54 kilometers east of Gorakhpur and about 214 kilometers northwest of Patna, is one of the four main pilgrimage sites for Buddhists, along with Lumbini, Bodhi Gaya and Sarnath. The Parinirvana Temple and Stupa, located here on a common foundation, mark the place where, around 543 B.C.E., according to traditional chronology, on a full moon night in the month of Vaishakha of the Indian calendar, which corresponds to April or May, the Buddha attained Parinirvana, leaving forever Samsara, the cycle of death and rebirth. The Parinirvana temple that can be visited today was built in 1956 by the Government of India, on the occasion of the 2500th anniversary of the Buddha's Parinirvana. Its construction coincided with the holding of the 6th Buddhist Council in Yangon, Myanmar, when 2,500 Buddhist monks from 8 countries recited together the Pali Sutras carrying the teachings of the Buddha. This temple houses a colossal statue of the Buddha lying on its side in the lion pose, dating back to the 5th century during the reign of King Kumaragupta I, the same king who built the Nalanda University. This statue, which was also seen and mentioned by the Chinese pilgrim Xuanzang, who visited Kusinara in 637 CE, would later be broken and buried under rubble during the Muslim invasion. It was rediscovered in 1876 by Carlyle, a British archaeologist assistant to Sir Alexander Cunningham, director of the Archaeological Survey of India. The statue is 6.1 meters long and was made from a single block of reddish sandstone. Approximately 16 centuries old, the statue is one of the very few representations of the Buddha attaining parinirvana. Buddhist pilgrims and temple visitors walk around the statue, which they venerate as a symbol of the Buddha, and some of them sit and spend some time here in meditation. The archaeological complex containing the Parinirvana Temple and Stupa also includes the ruins of 10 Buddhist monasteries built between the 4th and 11th centuries, as well as the ruins of other stupas.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Iti piso bhagavaya arahang samma sambuddho vichacharana sampanno sukhato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati sattha deva manusana buddho bhagavati. Buddhang namami, dhammang namami, Sanghang namami.
The Buddha had already reached the age of 80, and the work of his lifetime was drawing close to its end. 45 years had passed since, at the end of 6 years of intense practice, during a whole night of meditation, just before dawn, under a tree at Uruvela, he had attained liberation. He had spent the years that had passed since that full moon night alternating periods of meditation with travels through the kingdoms of the northern Indian subcontinent, explaining his way of seeing things and his method of practice. A growing order of bhikkhus had formed around him, and the number of lay followers had increased as well. Enchanted by his teachings and the fragrance of the state of samadhi that his presence emanated, people, younger or older, Maharajas, Brahmins, or men of modest means, will bow down with admiration and love at his feet, recognizing him as the human form of supreme knowledge. They will call him Bhagavat, the supreme divine teacher. But the deep devotion that he would inspire in some would be a reason for envy and consuming hatred from others, unable to understand and accept that it was due to natural laws, springing from his own practice and his own being. During these 45 years, there had been several attempts to denigrate him and fabricate plots against him, most of them orchestrated by followers of opposing religious groups, and even 3 assassination attempts. Fortunately, all had failed. As time passed, the old kings of Kosala and Magadha, who admired and respected the Buddha, were replaced by their sons, a new generation of kings who, beyond appearances, were no longer his friends. The last year of the Buddha's life is recounted in the Parinirvana Sutta, the longest sutra in the Pali Tipitaka canon. In his last discourse at Vulture's Peak, he will describe to the bhikkhus around him, once more, what ethical and pure living means, what the practice of samadhi is, and what higher knowledge consists of. He will then travel north through Nalanda, where he will meet Sariputra, probably for the last time. He will then continue his journey through Pataligama, Kotigama, Nadika, and Vesali, where he will stop at Ambapali's mango orchard. At each place he stops, he will repeat the same last discourse to the community of bhikkhus in the area. The Buddha will spend the rainy season near Vesali, in a village called Beluva, the only rainy season in the last 25 years that he will not spend at Jetavana. At Beluva he will be struck by a terrible illness, which he will overcome through concentration without complaining. He will tell Ananda that his body has grown old, and, like an old cart that is only held together by thongs, his body is only comfortable when his mind is absorbed in deep, objectless concentration. Each person must be their own refuge and their own light, through continuous attention to the body, sensations, mind, and the fundamental laws of being, without seeking refuge in anyone else, without coveting for what others have, and without letting themselves be consumed by resentment, he would also tell Ananda. After the end of the rainy season, he would leave for Jetavana, near Savatthi, the capital of the Kosala kingdom, where in November he would receive news of the unexpected death of Sariputra, his most prominent disciple. Sariputra had died suddenly, practically overnight, in Nalanda, his native village, in his mother's house, in the same room where he had been born, following symptoms that suggested a very strong toxi infection or poisoning. The Buddha will say that the loss of Sariputra is like when a hardwood tree has its thickest branch broken. Before, when Sariputra was alive, he would add, I was not concerned about where he was. But now, after his disappearance, all the gatherings of the community of bhikkhus seem deserted to me. 2 weeks later, Moggallana, Sariputra's friend, dies too, after being beaten with a club by a park guardian, bribed by members of an opposing religious group. With the disappearance of his main disciples, the 2 good friends Sariputra and Moggallana, the Buddha's lifelong work was threatened with falling apart. The Buddha returns to Vesali, where he announces to Ananda that in 3 months' time he will enter Parinirvana. He will leave for the northwest, accompanied by Ananda and other monks. After several stops along the way, he arrives at Pava, where he receives an offering of food from a goldsmith, who serves him some mushrooms or bulbous roots, probably a kind of truffle, called boar's delight. The Buddha tells the goldsmith to bury the remaining truffles and not give them to anyone else to eat. Then, together with Ananda, he leaves Pava, continuing his journey to the northwest, but on the way he becomes ill and is forced to sit down by a tree. He asks Ananda to bring him water to drink from a nearby stream. Ananda tells him that the water is very murky, because many carts have just crossed the river, but the Buddha insists on bringing him water. Ananda goes to the river where, inexplicably, the water clears, managing to bring him good water to drink. The Buddha then continues his journey to a grove in Kusinara, where he asks Ananda to spread a piece of robe for him over a slab that was there, between two flowering sala trees. On the last day, despite his advanced age and ill health, he had walked approximately 17 kilometers. The Buddha tells Ananda that in the future, devotees, whether monks or lay people, men or women, can go on pilgrimage to 4 important places: where he was born, where he attained liberation, where he began the exposition of his teaching, and where he will enter Parinirvana, without leaving behind anything that could constitute a basis for individuality. Ananda asks him how he should proceed with the body of the Tathagata, the one who has reached the end of the path. The Buddha replies that he should not worry about the rites of veneration of his body, but that everyone should strive to practice and meditate with determination and a concentrated mind. He tells him that the people of Kusinara would take care of all the necessary rites. Ananda goes to a nearby hut and, left alone, begins to cry. The Buddha notices his absence, sends for him, and praises his devotion. He then sends him to announce to the people of Kusinara that he will soon enter Parinirvana, and to tell them that they may come and see him one last time. In the early part of the night, entire families of villagers come and bid farewell to the Buddha. The Buddha will forbid the monks of his order to reproach the goldsmith for having died after the meal he was invited to at his home. The cause of his death remains a mystery to this day. Were those truffles spoiled, or poisonous, or were they poisoned intentionally? The rapid succession of deaths of his main disciples and his own disappearance raises some questions. The Buddha had long since attained liberation. His teachings had spread throughout the Indian kingdoms and had already begun their journey through the millennia for the benefit of countless generations. No man, no god, no demon could stop them now. But it was precisely the huge success of his teachings that had brought him enemies everywhere. Devadatta, who had orchestrated 3 assassination attempts on the Buddha, was already dead, but others remained, from followers of rival religious groups to war-hungry Maharajas. By asking the monks of his order not to bring reproaches to the goldsmith of Pava, did the Buddha want to prevent the revelation of a royal plot against the Buddhist order? Such a revelation could have triggered a widespread repression against those who practiced his teachings, and this he probably wanted to avoid at all costs. The Buddha tells Ananda that, in the future, the order can abolish the minor rules of discipline if they wish. He tells those present to ask him if they have any questions about the Buddha, the community of monks, the teaching, the path, or the practice, so that they will not regret later that they did not ask him for clarification when they had the opportunity, but none of the monks asks him anything. Then the Buddha will tell the monks, patterns have in their nature dissolution. Continue the practice with a concentrated mind. The Buddha will then successively enter deeper and deeper states of meditation, from the first jhana to the deepest level of samadhi, the total cessation of sensations and perception. Ananda believes he has entered Parinirvana, but Anuruddha, who was an experienced meditator, contradicts him. The Buddha will then go through all 9 states of meditation in reverse order, from the total cessation of sensations and perception to the first jhana, and then again in ascending order, from the first jhana to the 4th jhana, and then he will immediately enter Parinirvana. Freed from name and body, the Buddha left Samsara, the cycle of rebirth and death. He had been born into the family of a Raja, apparently destined to become king over the Sakyan people at the foot of the Himalayas. Through his own effort and power, he left his body as the king of meditators and yogis, leaving behind a spiritual legacy that would change the course of history. Unlike the vast majority of beings who experience death through the often frightening entry into the transient, perilous process in which the wind of one's own deeds pushes the individual into a new form of becoming, for him, separation from his last body was but a step on the all-encompassing path of meditation. The Parinirvana of the Buddha, his attainment of ultimate freedom, would remain as his final, unspoken teaching, a timeless model for humanity. As he had predicted, the inhabitants of Kusinara would take care of the funeral rites of his body, which they would venerate with garlands of flowers and fragrant essences, with music and songs, for 6 days. It was an irony that, although he had loved silence so much and abhorred noise, which he had called a thorn for meditation, his funeral rites included music and songs, just like the festivals he disliked, and which he used to avoid. On the 7th day, his body will be carried in a large procession, first to the north of the village, then to the east, with a funeral pyre being prepared near a local temple called Makuta Bandhanam. The villagers of Kusinara then tried to light the pyre, but it would not burn. When they asked Anuruddha what the reason could be, he told them that an old monk, Mahakashyapa, along with 500 bhikkhus, were on their way to Kusinara, coming from Pava, and the deities did not want the pyre to catch fire before they could prostrate themselves for the last time at the Buddha's feet. After Mahakashyapa and the 500 bhikkhus arrived, circled the Buddha's body 3 times and prostrated themselves at his feet, the funeral pyre caught fire. After the body was consumed by flames, it began to rain. The locals put out the fire with scented water and gathered the remaining bone relics, which they took to the village meeting hall, surrounding them with spears and bows. For another 7 days, they venerated the relics with music and songs. At the request of the emissaries of the Rajas and chieftains of the neighboring regions, who sent armies to besiege Kusinara, each demanding a share of the relics, they will be divided into 8 parts, which will be deposited in 8 stupas built at Kapilavastu, Ramagama, Rajagriha, Vesali, Alakappa, Vethadipa, Pava, and Kusinara. About 3 months later, 500 bhikkhus will gather at the Saptapani caves at Rajagriha, where they will recite together, after Ananda and Upali, the Pali Sutras that constitute the central part of the Tipitaka canon, to be preserved in the collective memory for centuries. The Buddha's teachings will spread throughout India, then throughout Asia, and will eventually reach Europe and America, offering humanity not only the ideal of liberation beyond the ceaseless changes of becoming, beyond the promises of some paradise for the small individual ego, but also the practical means to achieve this supreme goal by traveling the same path that he himself traveled. The stupa that marks the place where the Buddha's body was cremated, a location that the sutras call Makuta Bandhanam, is known today as the Ramabhar Stupa. This stupa is about 1.5 kilometers east of the Parinirvana Stupa, in a small, well-maintained park. It is a place visited with reverence by Buddhist pilgrims. Some of them circle around the stupa, others sit here, in meditation. All the important places in the life of the Buddha, in India and Nepal, are filled with a subtle charm and the fragrance of meditation. For Buddhist devotees, visiting them at least once in their lifetime is an enchanting dream come true. The unique power of the Ramabhar Stupa is that here, beyond the bricks of the stupa, you see the image of the funeral pyre that consumed the Buddha's body, and it makes you understand that your own time is limited. Here, you will clearly see what are the important things you need to do before that moment comes when everything you haven't done yet can no longer be done. As in the great ocean there is but one taste, that of salt. In all the teachings I have given you, there is but one taste, the taste of freedom.
Mano puban gama dhamma manu setha manu maya mansache padutthena bhasati va karoti va tato nan dukh man veti chakkan va vahto padan mano puban gama dhamma manu setha manu maya mansache pasannena bhasati va karoti va।